Donald Trump is the first former president to be charged with a crime, but he isn't the first former presidential candidate to be indicted, or for that indictment to involve a hush money payment. Just over 10 years ago, Democrat John Edwards stood trial for money and gifts given to his mistress.
There's nothing illegal about giving somebody hush money not to talk about it. If it was done specifically for the purpose of promoting your candidacy for a federal office, that's where the problem comes in.
Here's how the two cases compare and what we can learn about the potential strengths and weaknesses of the one against Trump from the other. Let's start with what happened with John Edwards. A senator from North Carolina, he became John Kerry's 2004 running mate before running in the 2008 presidential primary against Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. He did okay in Iowa, but quickly dropped out.
It's time for me to step aside so that history can blaze its path.
That year, tabloid stories surfaced about him having a child from an affair, which, after 2 years of denying,
tabloid trash is full of lies,
he admitted to. The scandal had everything.
Could be the biggest political sex scandal of our generation.
I just turned to him and said, "You're so hot."
Hundreds of thousands of dollars given to him by supporters.
Private jet flights and luxury hotel rooms.
While his wife was battling terminal cancer.
John Edwards' sex tape details revealed.
It was a huge scandal at the time. People loved Elizabeth Edwards. Elizabeth Edwards really helped John Edwards' reputation mammothly. So they really sold themselves as, a loving, everyday American family.
Here's what the Justice Department said happened during the campaign. Campaign worker Rielle Hunter, pregnant with John Edwards' daughter while his wife Elizabeth was dying of cancer, was given cash, luxury hotel stays, apartments, and rides on private planes by a wealthy member of his campaign and a wealthy donor to be kept out of sight. These were also given to a close aide who falsely claimed to be the baby's father. None of this money came directly through the campaign or Edwards himself. Prosecutors argued Edwards orchestrated this web of money and that the payments were made to help his campaign. A federal grand jury indicted Edwards on 6 federal counts of campaign finance law violations.
John Edwards is a lousy human being, but I think this is a really lousy and flimsy criminal case.
Melanie Sloan founded this government accountability group and still works in ethics and campaign law. She followed the Edwards trial closely.
There was no evidence that John Edwards personally gave the money. Regardless of whether that had happened, there still would have been the question about why. Is the money a campaign donation? Is it being spent to advance your candidacy? Or is it money being spent to hush this up for some other reason, i.e. to protect your family?
While I do not believe I did anything illegal or ever thought I was doing anything illegal, I did an awful lot that was wrong.
New York prosecutors argue with Trump the reason was clearly because of the 2016 election. Trump denies any wrongdoing. Here's what prosecutors say happened. In 2016, porn star Stormy Daniels' lawyer went to the National Enquirer. Yes, that same tabloid, to sell her story about an alleged sexual encounter with Trump from a decade prior. The CEO of the tabloid's publisher, David Pecker, was able to connect her with Trump's lawyer, Michael Cohen, who eventually paid her $130,000 to keep quiet. Cohen was later reimbursed by submitting monthly invoices for legal services, which were paid by Trump through the Trump Organization. New York prosecutors say those payment records were false business records.
The 34 charges come out of the same set of facts. Each time there's an invoice, and each time there's a payment, and each time there's a bookkeeping record. That is all the crime of falsifying the business records in order to cover up a crime.
With Edwards' case, this donor had died, and this one was 100 and never testified. A jury acquitted him on 1 charge and deadlocked on another 5. So the trial ended in a mistrial. Jurors said there wasn't enough evidence tying him to the money.
We all thought that he knew, but there just was not the evidence there to prove it.
It was just a lack of evidence.
With Trump, prosecutors say they have evidence that he was involved in the payments, besides Trump's name and signature on the checks, and that the intent of the payments was to help his campaign. Cohen has already pleaded guilty and served time in jail for these payments being campaign-related. And prosecutors say Trump directed Cohen to delay Daniels' payment until after the election, because then it would not matter if the story becomes public. Prosecutors also point to a similar payment made to another woman who alleged she had a sexual encounter with Trump, Karen McDougal. They say Pecker and Cohen worked out a deal that ultimately paid McDougal $150,000 for her silence, and that there are audio recordings of Trump and Cohen discussing this arrangement. Testimony from Pecker says he made the connections to the two women to ensure no damaging allegations would be published before the election and thereby influence that election.
The indictment and statement of facts particularly do not suggest in any way, shape, or form that this was ever about hiding it from his wife. In fact, they make it very, very clear that what they want to do is hide it during the course of the presidential election.
Federal prosecutors, when charging Cohen in 2019, declined to indict Trump, who was still in office. These charges were filed in a New York state court. Experts like Sloan argue that this case may not even be as strong as the one against Edwards, which was in federal court, even with these connections.
I don't think this is a slam dunk by any means. The fact that it's not being a federal case, that it's actually not being done by the Justice Department when you have a federal campaign finance law and that it's being bootstrapped into a state court, that is unprecedented.
Trump pleaded not guilty to all 34 charges. He denies the alleged sexual encounters.
This fake case was brought only to interfere with the upcoming 2024 election, and it should be dropped immediately.
He's not likely to face jail time if convicted, and the trial, if it happens, isn't expected to move quickly. The next court date is in December of 2023.